Thanks very much. I appreciate it. I do about 100 speeches a year, and this is the first time I've ever had to follow the electric rock violin virtuoso. So that's sort of a new and refreshing tale. And it's funny, when you put the fact that you're a tequila lover in your bio, it's amazing how all the corporations want you to come in the morning. It's probably smart. These United guys are not stupid. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh, you know, we're trying to run our business. We've got all these things to do, and now some guy is going to tell us about Facebook. And we are going to talk about social media, obviously. But I want to start off by saying I am deceptively youthful looking. Perhaps not on the HD screen, but you know, when I was in college, I had a typewriter, okay? I learned how to do all these things. I didn't come out of the womb as a social media geek boy. You know, I learned how to do these things. And you can learn how to do them too. There is no special secret sauce needed to be good at social media. And let's talk about that. I want you to first put on your pretend hat, if you will, for a second. Let's pretend that you are at a budget motel in Arizona, far away from the Rosen Shingle Creek category. And this budget motel is bad. It's this kind of bad. And I actually got bed bugs a few weeks ago in Sioux Falls, so I've actually been down this road a little bit recently. Let's say this motel was bad. Historically, and in my business, when I say historically, I mean like 2 years ago, historically, what would you do about that if you had a bad hotel experience? Well, maybe you would trot on down to the front desk. You would get loud, and you would say, this room is unsatisfactory. We've got to do something about this. Or maybe you would call the phone. If it's a chain, they had an 800 number, 877 number, maybe you would call up and say, this room is unsatisfactory. We need to do something about this. Or maybe you would actually write a letter. If you remember how that works, there's trees and they're flat and the pen, and the gold-nibbed fountain pen is usually standard equipment in motels in that category. But nowadays, as often as not, you don't have to do any of those things. You can grab your iPhone or your HTC Droid, Incredulous, whatever they happen to be, and you could leave a review on a website like TripAdvisor.com in just a few seconds. Social media is the darling of the passive-aggressive. You could in just a few seconds, leave a review like this guy did. This is the actual review, the first review that comes up. First review that comes up on TripAdvisor.com for the Budget Host Saga Motel. True story, located around the corner from my former house in Flagstaff. Headline of this review: I think I can feel death creeping upon me as I write this. Which is what we call in the social media consulting business a highly negative social media mention. Goes on to say, it's so gross, like something in a horror movie. I'm about to walk out to my car to get my own blankets because this bed is so gross, I don't even want to imagine how many people are brought here to be murdered. Do not stay here. My wife and I are going to go get tested for HIV because of this bed. Also, the Wi-Fi blows. Now, that is definitely my favorite part of this review, right? Because this guy puts HIV and Wi-Fi on the same amenity level, which is definitely a sign of the times, right? That in and of itself sort of encapsulates where we're at as a society. But this review was left February 16th of 2010, so that's 15 months or so ago, and remains unanswered. Still sitting there, just sitting there. Now, in days past, if you had a bad hotel experience, how many people could you tell about that experience? Okay? The number of people that you could express your ire to is constrained by the number of people that you come into contact with. How many people do you see at work? How many people do you see at church? How many people do you see at your kid's soccer game? There's a finite number associated with those in-person connections. What is that, 25, 50, right? If you're Laura Gale and you know everybody, maybe it's 200. But there is a number of people that you can express your displeasure to. Now, this review is online, and hundreds or thousands of people are probably seeing that review. And while I don't know for a fact, I suspect that that is having a relatively negative impact on their business, because it would be a fairly bold call to be booking rooms in that hotel after going to TripAdvisor.com, because you're thinking, okay, well, the HIV part is a concern. But continental breakfast, I mean, you gotta, so close to the Grand Canyon, I'm gonna overlook the murder. Today, every customer is a reporter. Every customer is a reporter. And that creates 4 big challenges for business. Now, the first one is verification. We don't know for a fact that Sean 398-5789 actually stayed at that motel, do we? We assume so. We hope so, but we can't guarantee it. We can't verify it. If someone comes down to the front desk to complain, we know they stayed at the motel because they're standing in front of us. But online, we're not sure. It could be the guy that owns the motel across the street. And we hope that doesn't happen, but it absolutely does happen. Now, in this particular case, there are several other reviews in the same sort of level of disappointment. So I'm fairly certain that this, in fact, occurred. But verification is a challenge. So is contemplation. If someone contacts your business in the real world, you have a chance to think about how you want to respond. How do we want to handle this? Now the review is online, boom, 5 seconds, and you're instantly in reaction mode. Coordination as well. Someone calls your 800 number and says, I've got a problem. You can say, oh, I'm going to contact the manager of that particular motel, or I'm going to contact the head of housekeeping and see what the problem is. Now, boom, 5 seconds, we're in reaction mode. Perhaps most importantly, privacy. However you choose to handle a circumstance like that, whether it's, yeah, you know what, we should give you your money back, or, the murder sheets is just kind of how we roll. However you choose to handle that in that customer service continuum is really between you and the customer. That face-to-face conversation is between you and him. The telephone call between you and him. The letter and the response letter between you and him. And now all of our laundry, whether dirty or clean, is out there for everybody to see. We've lost the ability to be private, and that certainly creates challenges for business. It's funny, though, to some degree, we have created our own Frankenstein. Because as consumers, as individuals, as customers, and we all are, we love this. It is intoxicating and exhilarating because it gives us a measure of control. The history of business, since the first caveman sold a rock to another caveman, has always had essentially the same relationship. It's master and servant. Master and servant. And everything we've done in marketing and communication since that point has been some version of that script. We've got great stuff. Buy it. We've got great stuff. Buy it. We've got great stuff. Will you please buy it? It's always some combination of that. And now, customers have skin in the game. Customers are part of the equation. It's not master and servant anymore. It's peer-to-peer. And we have to stop marketing at people and start to market with people. And that ability to have skin in the game, that ability to be a peer with businesses is fantastic as consumers. But as business owners, as marketers, as entrepreneurs, it's a little bit scary. I'll grant you that. In order to succeed in this world, where every customer is a reporter, and we're operating at the speed of thought, companies need to do 3 things. They have to get faster. They have to get smarter. And they have to get more social. I wrote a book about that. And in fact, everybody who comes to my breakout sessions, I'm doing 3 breakouts this afternoon. Everybody gets a copy of my book for free. Thank you to United for that. That's fantastic. So thank you. The reason the book is called The Now Revolution is that the Now Revolution is the inflection point, the tipping point, at which companies like yours have to fundamentally change the way they do business because customers expect it. They demand that you operate with the speed and authenticity that social media requires. And the Now Revolution starts today. Let's talk about getting faster, the first objective. You know, this notion of getting faster, we've actually had to do this several times historically. If you think back, we've always had to get faster, haven't we? There was a period, it was a while ago, but there was a period where we didn't have to answer the telephone. If you were a office supplier in Victorian Orlando, actually there probably wasn't a Victorian Orlando, Victorian Philadelphia, and you sold somebody something that they were dissatisfied with, they couldn't call you. They'd have to bring the stuff back to you and say, hey, let's make this right. And then the telephone was invented, and we had to fundamentally change the way we do business because of the invention of the telephone. And then the fax machine was invented by a consortium of curly paper manufacturers to move that product line. And the fax machine was invented, and now we had to fundamentally change the way that we do business because of the invention of the fax. You could get letters through the air. It's the devil's work. Then along comes the web. We're going to talk about something that transforms business and continues to do so, as Todd just mentioned. I spent 15 years of my life convincing people that they needed to get a website. And that wasn't that long ago. And to now think of the fact that you wouldn't have a website, that you wouldn't look at it as a major channel of business, seems positively Amish by comparison. We have had to fundamentally change the way we do business because of the invention of the web. And then email. You want to talk about something that's changed business. Can you even remember? I can certainly remember business without email, and it was a whole different place. Today, you send somebody an email, and they don't get back to you for a day, you start freaking out. You're like, is she sick? I didn't get an out of office. So then you start playing like these weird mental games with yourself. You're like, well, should I follow up with that email with a second email? Or does that make me seem sad and desperate? Should I go cross-functional and go voicemail to follow up on my email? Should I text message? It's like all these mental gymnastics. We've had to totally and completely fundamentally change the way we do business because of the invention of the email. And now along comes social media, which is actually the most transformative of any of those because it is the only one that flips that historical script from master and servant to peer-to-peer. The most transformative of all. But yet, we're not changing our businesses as the result of social media. Not really. We say we are, but we're not. Having a Twitter account isn't transforming your business. For most companies, it's a very short press release. Having a Facebook page is not transforming your business. For most companies, it is a gussied up Yellow Pages ad. We've got to do more than that. We've got to do better. You can all do better than that, and United can help you. The first key to making this work is understanding that social media is actually not about technology at all. It's about corporate culture and personality. And if we're going to operate at the same speed that our customers are operating at, if we're going to win business in a world where 10-year-old kids are Skyping from an iPhone, we have to be able to move seamlessly, frictionlessly in every company regardless of size. And the only way that happens, it's not about buying more technology. It's about being able to do stuff without asking permission. It's about having every employee in your organization rowing in the same direction. Social media success is rooted in cultural alignment, in everybody operating in the same direction. We have to empower our employees to make the right decision right now, because we cannot call a committee meeting every time we have to figure out what we should do about a tweet that was sent. Because by the time you send out the meeting request, it's over. Game over. Right decision right now. And that requires us to acquire talent that we can trust. To get talent into our organization, whether it's sales, customer service, operations, anything else, people that we can trust to make that right decision right now. One of the companies that does this particularly well is ThinkGeek. ThinkGeek is an online and catalog provider of highly geeky merchandise. Highly geeky. If you want an iPad case that is also an Etch-a-Sketch, which is just as fantastic as it sounds, that's the place to buy it. If you want a t-shirt that has a working guitar embedded in it, so you can play your own chest, which is both awesome and totally disconcerting, that is the place to buy it. ThinkGeek is hugely successful. They are killing it, growing like a weed, because they sell to geeks, and they are geeks, all of them, a lot. Here's how geeky they are. And when you apply for a job at ThinkGeek, and it doesn't matter whether you're applying for the president's job or stock boy, the first question they ask, every single applicant, first question, Star Wars or Star Trek? That's the first question. All right, let's do, I can't do a show of hands because it's too bright up here. Let's do, by applause, let's do this. Star Wars. Okay. Okay. Star Trek. Wow. Wow. That's a pretty even split. I think all the West Coasters and online guys are the Star Trek crew. They're so geeky at ThinkGeek that every Wednesday night in the break room, not in 1985, today, every Wednesday night, Dungeons and Dragons night. Remember that. Roll on the old 20 side. Can it happen? They're so geeky that someone left a wall post on their Facebook page in binary code. 0111, and they answered back in binary code in like 5 minutes because everybody there knows binary, right? It's like Klingon. Sure, we know binary. No problem. ThinkGeek, as many companies do now, has a community manager, a lady whose responsibility it is to manage the Twitter account, manage the Facebook page, sort of be the voice of the company, if you will. When she goes on vacation, it's a real badge of honor in their organization to be the replacement, to be the fill-in voice of ThinkGeek. But when she's gone and you're the replacement, the goal is not to put your own spin on it. The goal is to make it seem like she was never gone. Because ThinkGeek operates with one head and one heart. They move as one organism. They are all on the same page of the playbook. And their vice president told me a very interesting thing when I interviewed him for the book. He said, you know, how come car companies don't only hire people for every position that are wildly passionate about cars? And it's a great question. And it applies 1,000% to everybody in this room. If we're going to operate at the speed of thought, and we're going to trust our employees to make the right decision right now, and we're going to operate with one head and one heart, we need to start hiring for passion and training for skills instead of the other way around. Let's talk about getting smarter. When we talk about getting smarter via social media, that usually is rooted somehow in data and analysis and listening. And the challenge that you find in social media, and this may be true of some of you here, is this notion that social media is somehow inherently dangerous, that it is shark-infested. I hear this quite a bit. We'd like to get active in social media, Jay, but what if somebody says something bad about us? Anybody heard that? Maybe you've uttered those words yourself. If your company sucks, Twitter's not your problem. Okay? You have a bigger problem. This idea that somehow negativity is the culprit is sort of the postmodern version of this. Everybody here has a telephone at this point. Imagine you have a telephone, someone calls your company and says, yes, there's an error with my paper order. I'd like to talk to somebody about that, and you hang up the phone. We only take positive phone calls here. We don't take negative phone calls, right? You have to recognize that all of the information available to you in social media is net positive. May not be truly positive, but it's net positive. Things that people say these guys are a great company, that's obviously positive. If they say you're a bad company, that's good to know. Neutral information is good to know. It's all useful. Because you have to realize we're entering an era, in fact, in many businesses we're already there, that anything that happens in your company will manifest itself in social media first. Ask Charlie Sheen, ask Kenneth Cole, ask Bin Laden, ask Richard Mendenhall, okay? Ask Arnold Schwarzenegger from this morning, okay? The world happens on social media first. Traditional media get most of their story ideas now from social media. So this is the ultimate canary in the coal mine. You have to be paying attention all the time. In order to make that happen, though, in order to make that work for your business, you have to be listening to the social media conversation. And that typically requires some sort of software, free or paid, paying attention, tuning in, setting up searches for your company name, your product names, your employee names, your competitors' names, and using that real-time information to interact with customers, prospective customers, okay? It's not easy, but it's absolutely doable. One of the things that makes listening effective in companies is to decentralize it, to set it up so it's not just one person in your company who occasionally runs a search on Twitter to see if anybody happens to have spoken about you, but have different people in your company listening for things that are important to them. And a lot of what we talk about in social media now, the next evolution of social media, is decentralization. Getting lots and lots of people in your company involved in social media in some form or fashion. But when I talk about decentralization, I'm not advocating anarchy or chaos. I'm not saying everybody get on Twitter and woo, it's going to be awesome. Because the fire's too hot for that, right? You have to have some level of control. We're not talking about improv. You have to have some measure of control, of governance to your social media program. And the analogy that we use in the book is a football analogy. I also used it because of Cody and his deep love for The Ohio State University. Football analogy, there's 3 types of governance in social media, 3 ways to plan and execute social media in your company. Now, obviously, the smaller your company is, the fewer than each number of people you'll have in each of these layers of governance, but the structure should be the same regardless of how big your company is. 3 layers: coaches, the booth, which are your assistant coaches up in the press box, and players. Now, coaches are your people who are putting together a social media strategy for your organization. Why are we doing this? How are we going to resource it? How do we know if it is working for us? Strategic decisions. And the people who should be on that coaching staff come from all corners of your organization: ownership, marketing, sales, customer service. It's not just marketing. The mistake that a lot of companies make, especially mid-sized companies and larger, when they put together their social media strategic council, if you will, is they do it by org chart, and you may do the same thing. Well, she's the head of sales, so she should be on the committee, and he's the head of operations, so he should be on the committee, and she's the marketing director, so she should be on the committee, and you end up with this sort of Noah's Ark approach, one from here, and what you get is a whole committee of people who are supposed to be doing social media strategy, very few of whom have ever participated in social media, which creates poor outcomes, because social media, more so than anything before that, merits experiential learning. How social media fits into our culture changes all the time, and the tools change all the time. And you have to roll around in it to see that coming. Most of the rules about social media are truly unwritten. And the truth is this: if you don't love social media, you suck at social media. It's not a half-pregnant circumstance, right? You're either sort of in it or out of it. So what you are better off doing as a business, okay? Instead of saying director of this and director of that and head of this and head of that, you go figure it out. Find the people in your company, and I guarantee you they exist, who have a passion for social media, who are writing a cat blog on the side, right? And are doing restaurant reviews on Facebook on their off hours. Every company has people who use social media as people. Hire Cody's kids, they're tweeting away. Take those people in your company and empower them to lead you into the future. Empower them to help you figure out your social media strategy, because they're going to do a lot better job than the people who have no idea what any of this is about, okay? The second group is the booth, the assistant coaches, who take social media strategy and bring it down into operating reality. For example, the kind of question that your booth, your assistant coaches, has to answer, and those are typically sort of managers, marketing manager, customer service manager, sales manager. The kind of question that the booth needs to answer for every business is something like, should we be paying attention to Twitter nights and weekends? Because Twitter doesn't go to sleep at Friday at 5. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how many people are out there talking about you, your organization, depends on what city you're in. But that kind of question, that operations question, is what needs to be answered by the booth. And the players are just what you think they are. It is your hands-on keyboard, social media practitioners in your company. They're tweeting, they're Facebooking, they're listening, they're analyzing, they're making videos, they're writing blog posts. They're doing stuff every hour of every day. Coaches, booth, players. Now, however you decide to structure that in your company, it is imperative that you put together some sort of success metrics, some sort of scoreboard around social media, so you know whether it's working. Because it is not an insignificant investment. Social media is not inexpensive. It's different expensive. You are trading advertising dollars for labor dollars. Okay? To do this well takes real time. You need to know whether that time commitment is paying off. And what I hear from people consistently is that social media isn't measurable. And when I hear that, I want to smack people in the head. Because social media, if anything, is actually too measurable. In the book, we talk about 26 different success metrics that you could conceivably use to measure the effectiveness of your social media program. The challenge isn't that it's not measurable. The challenge is figuring out which metrics make sense for your business. Because how you choose to utilize social media for your company dictates what success metrics are relevant to you. So if you're going to use social media to generate awareness, to Todd's point earlier that only 35% of the people in your market know who you are, perhaps social media is a good way to impact that. That is certainly a valid and valuable use of social media. If that is your objective, then you will have success metrics that measure whether that objective is being met. If you're going to use social media to sell stuff, to take existing awareness and translate it into actual new orders, again, another valid and valuable use of social media, then you will have success metrics that determine whether or not that's working. Or if you're using social media to generate loyalty and retention and keep the existing customers that you fought so hard against the big box retailers to get, that's another set of metrics. But how you choose to deploy social media and to what end dictates how you measure it. And that actually requires work, actual analysis. And that's why most people don't do it. Because instead what they want to do is say, well, look how many Facebook fans we have. Right? We yearn for a magic number. We want the easy statistical solution. I just log into Facebook and it says how many Facebook fans I have. End of analysis. Ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. Let's think about what it takes to become a Facebook fan. Let's break this down physiologically. Best as I can tell, it takes one click of one finger to become a Facebook fan. That's not exactly a blood oath, okay? It's one click, all right? It takes a lot more, significantly more, of your customers and prospects to sign up for your email newsletter than it does to become a Facebook fan. Yet we don't roll around beating our chest about how many email subscribers we have, okay? The goal is not to be good at social media. The goal is to be good at business because of social media. In order to do that, you have to measure behavior, not aggregation. Okay? We're not just collecting fans and tagging them in the ear like a bald eagle. Okay? That doesn't get you anywhere. Measure behavior. One of the things that I like a lot about social media is that sometimes companies can create scoreboards, can create success metrics that are uniquely defined by the business they're in and the type of company they are. One company that does that is Martel Home Builders. They're in New Brunswick in Canada. And they almost went out of business in 2007. They were doing okay, but 90% of their home sales were through the realtor channel. And so they were paying out significant commissions, and it was really impacting their bottom line. So they said, we've got to find a way to get more business direct. How do we get more direct sales? And we don't have any budget at all for marketing. So they took to social media. They put together a really fantastic blog, which is all about, if you're moving, what to do about it. It's not about them. And most good blogs are not about you. It's about something bigger. So they talk about moving tips, packing tips, New Brunswick school reviews, restaurant reviews, things like that. Their CEO, Pierre Martel, put together a Twitter program for himself where he participates in conversations where he can add value. If someone says something about New Brunswick, he listens to that using software and says, oh, I'm in New Brunswick. How can I help you? Do you need a school review? Do you need a restaurant review? Do you need a church review? What would you like to know? And then eventually, oh, by the way, I sell houses too. They put together a couple of buzzworthy programs too. The best one is this. If you're a Martel customer, you get a password to an extranet, a website that you can log into. And they actually took all the work trucks of their foremen and they tagged them with a GPS device, RFID, put it on a map. So you can log in, it's got a map of the area, and if the guy is supposed to be at your house to fix your drywall, and he's not there, you can dial it up and be like, he's at the pub, right? And you can absolutely you can bust him for it. It's fantastic. So fast forward 2 years, okay? 400% top line growth in 2008, 2009. As a home builder, right? That doesn't really happen anywhere else. 400% top line growth. And the percentage of sales through the realtor channel went from 90% to 12%. The other metric that Martel uses to determine the effectiveness of social media is how long does it take to sell a home? Right? You're buying a house, that's a big deal. You're going to hem and haw and kick the tires and think about it a little bit. And it was taking them 4, 5, 8 weeks to get a deal closed. Now, that doesn't happen. People walk into their office all the time and say, I don't need a brochure. I don't need the sales pitch. I want a Martel home. I read your blog. I follow you on Twitter. I've paid attention to what you're doing on Facebook. I've watched all your YouTube videos. I've talked to my friends. I'm already sold. I know I want this model on this lot. Buy local. Sound familiar? Their new record for fastest home sale 34 minutes. Let's talk about getting more social. How can you get more social? I'll tell you this. People say that social media is some kind of unicorn, and it's really just a horse. If you just learned 4 magic words and applied them correctly and universally, you would be better at social media than 80% of the companies out there, and certainly better than every big box retailer in the world. If you just learned these 4 words, thank you and I'm sorry, and applied them consistently and universally, you would be in great shape. One of the companies that does that well is Sweet Leaf Tea. Sweet Leaf Tea is an emerging beverage brand based in Austin, Texas. They're like Snapple, kind of, but good. And hopefully there's no Snapple retailers here. I probably should have checked on that first. Apologies. They're like Snapple, but good. And they have this program in social media called the Give Lollipops program. The reason it's called that is if you remember when we used to actually go to the bank, we would go through drive-thru and you were a kid. If you're in a drive-thru in a bank as a kid and your mom's depositing money, taking money out, didn't really matter at all what her transaction was, closing the account. If you're a kid in a car, in a bank drive-thru, you get a lollipop. Always, right? Back in the day, dumb sucker. And they treat social media the same way. If someone says something about Sweet Leaf Tea on social media, Twitter, Facebook, blog post, YouTube video, doesn't matter, they find it, and within an hour, if they can, that's their guideline, within an hour, they answer back and say, thanks very much. Can we send you some coupons? Conversely, if somebody says something negative about Sweet Leaf Tea in social media, Twitter, Facebook, blog post, YouTube, LinkedIn, doesn't matter, within an hour, we're really sorry we disappointed you. Can we send you some coupons for a different flavor? Thank you, I'm sorry. Sometimes it doesn't have to be any harder than that. But to truly get to the promised land, to get to the ultimate of social media, you can't just respond. You have to create conversations about your company, create things for people to talk about, especially in your business, because there's not a tremendous amount of existing chatter in social media about office products. So you have to give people something to talk about. But that takes time. There's a continuum that businesses go through to get to that point. I call it the humanization highway. This is the process, the road down which companies move to get to sort of the social media promised land. And there's 5 stages on this highway. The far left is ignoring. That is the budget host saga motel. That is the, your sheets are filled with murder and you are oblivious, okay? Hopefully none of you are there. The second step is listening, okay? That's where you are paying attention to what's being said in social media, but you're not necessarily answering back. You're not necessarily doing anything about it, but at least you're gathering that information for market research purposes. The third step is responding, and that's Sweet Leaf Tea. Someone says something about you directly, and you respond, thank you, I'm sorry. The fourth step is participating, and that's Pierre Martel. Somebody says something about New Brunswick. Hey, I'm from New Brunswick. How can I help you? Participating in conversations that aren't necessarily about you directly, but conversations where you can add value, that are contextually appropriate. LinkedIn is a particularly good venue for that type of participation for your industry. And the far side is storytelling. That's where you're creating stories about your company, true stories, but you're out there talking about what makes you special, what makes you different, what makes you better, what makes you a more logical choice than the big guy down the street. Storytelling. And you've got the hard part licked, right? You have a story to tell. You have a tremendous buy local story to tell. You have a tremendous product knowledge story to tell. You have, in many cases, a tremendous historical story to tell. You've been in your cities forever. You are part of the backbone of your communities, and every bit of that is valid and valuable stories that you need to be telling in social media. Because social media is about creating kinship between companies and prospective customers. It's about making your company feel more like a person. And who is that easier for? Smaller company or bigger company? It's easier for smaller company because you're closer to the customer. It's not a coincidence, though, that the companies that are the best at external storytelling are also the companies that are the best at internal story harvesting. And what I mean by that is that every company has legends, has stories, has, remember that time when we did that crazy thing and we delivered this order and it was like, snowstorm, or it was on Christmas, or every company has those sort of water cooler, scrapbook, archival, that is part of our legend kind of moments. But there's companies that are a lot better at finding those moments and documenting them than others. The problem, oftentimes, is that the people in the company responsible for telling stories are in marketing. And marketing usually has no idea what's actually going on in the company. Hey, I is one. I mean, it's, because marketing is doing marketing. The people who know what's going on in your company are in sales, operations, and customer service. They know what's really going on because they're talking to customers every day. So the companies that are really good at storytelling in social media or anywhere else, frankly, are the companies that tie marketing very specifically into sales, operations, and customer service to pull those stories out. So if your sales guy's in the field and he sees, you guys went above and beyond, did this crazy thing, that person needs to be trained to communicate that story back to marketing immediately, okay, so that it can be manifested in some sort of external social media way. When you tell stories, though, they have to be helpful, interesting, and human. There we go. Anybody know who that is? Jared from Subway. Fat guy, eats only sandwiches, loses weight, becomes thin guy, okay? But here's the thing. The campaign that Subway ran immediately prior to Jared was called 6 Under 6. 6 subs, each with under 6 grams of fat. 6 Under 6, it's not bad. I mean, it's not just do it, it's not the best campaign ever, but it's, it's got a little ring to it. 6 Under 6. But here's the thing, 6 Under 6 and Jared are the exact same campaign. Eat sandwiches, lose weight, same deal. But one of them, you will always remember Jared. You'll be 85 years old playing bingo for bananas in a nursing home, and you'll always remember Jared, especially now, and you're welcome. 6 Under 6, you will forget by the time you walk out of here, because one is human and one is not. Social media is about people, not about logos. So when you're telling your stories, tell them about your employees and about you and about your customers and your business partners, not about your product and your factory and your trucks, because nobody cares about that. Okay? There's no Facebook page about staplers, because nobody cares enough about that part of it. What they care enough about is, who is this 100-year-old company that's been selling staplers in this tiny town for a century? How do they do that? Why do they do that? How are they so awesome? How are they involved in our community? That's the story to tell. Sometimes you can combine being smarter and being more social to capitalize upon what we call the opportunity economy. You can have your antenna up. You can be listening to find chances to engage in conversations that can create sales, can create loyalty, can delight customers and prospective customers. Having your antenna up to find those opportunities, listening in social media to see that chance to engage. My favorite case study about that is Taylor Guitars. Taylor Guitars is a manufacturer of guitars in San Diego. Some of you may know the United Breaks Guitars case study. A couple of years ago, there was a musician, Dave Carroll, and he went on a United flight, put his plane, or his guitar into the belly of the plane, got to his destination, guitar shattered, all smashed up, in the case. He's like, well, that's not right. So he complains at the airport, sorry, we can't help you. Calls 800 number, sorry, we can't help you. Writes a letter, sorry, we can't help you. This goes on for 18 months of the runaround. Finally, he takes matters into his own hands. He creates a YouTube video, a music video, writes a whole song about it called United Breaks Guitars. Incredibly catchy tune, fantastically hilarious video. 11 million YouTube views. Front page of the LA Times, front page of the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC. They probably should have just fixed his guitar. Would have been a lot cheaper. So Dave Carroll's story is a great example of every customer being a reporter, like we talked about earlier. But I think the better part of that story is what Taylor Guitars did. Dave Carroll plays a Taylor guitar and talks about his Taylor guitar in the music video. 36 hours after Dave Carroll's video hit YouTube, Taylor Guitars put their own video on YouTube as a response. You can tie videos together in YouTube as a response video. It was called Taylor Guitars Responds to United Breaks Guitars. And it was no big Hollywood production. There was no dry ice. There was no lasers. It was just Bob Taylor, their owner, standing in their factory with a regular flip camera, and the guys behind him, it's not even quiet on the set, the guys behind him are still in the factory, hammers and saws and drill press and stuff. Super basic. It went something like this. Hi, I'm Bob Taylor from the Taylor Guitars Factory Service Center here in El Cajon, California. And boy, we just watched this video from Dave Carroll, and what a shame what happened to his guitar. It's really tragic. But you know, you're actually allowed to take guitars and most musical instruments on board a jet aircraft in the United States. But many airline employees, and in fact many TSA employees, don't know that. So on our website, www.taylorguitars.com, we have those actual guidelines and rules listed. We suggest that you print those out and carry them with you in your carry-on so that if anybody ever challenges you at the airport about taking your guitar on board, you can show them those guidelines and they should let you take it into checked baggage. However, if anything were to happen to your guitar, here at the Factory Service Center, we can work miracles. We get guitars sent to us all the time that just appear to be obliterated, and we can put them back together. And I'm happy to announce that just 2 weeks ago, we changed our policy. So now, not only can we fix Taylor guitars, but we can fix all makes and models of guitars. So if something unfortunate were to happen to one of your musical instruments, please give us a chance here to fix it at Taylor Guitars. Thanks very much for listening. I'm Bob Taylor. Out. Minute and a half. 600,000 YouTube views. Okay? Why does that work? Well, it was fast. 36 hours. If that was a week later, useless. Okay? And the second thing is, he's helping, not selling. The difference between helping and selling is just 2 letters. But those letters are extraordinarily important. Because unlike everything else that you do every day, in social media, you earn the right to promote. If you buy a newspaper ad, you buy a radio ad, you buy a billboard, you are purchasing the right to promote. In social media, it doesn't work that way. You earn the right to promote by being helpful first. Is Bob Taylor selling something? Yeah, a little bit. But he's being helpful first. And if this was, hey, come on down and we'll throw in a free amplifier and some picks, useless. Okay? And that's a big challenge for a lot of companies in social media. They're trying to turn it into a coupon service. And that's not going to work. The good thing is you have so much to give in social media. You have so much product knowledge, category knowledge. We talked about Harvey Mackay. Knowing something about your customer is better than knowing everything about your products. Social media is a great way to convey that. So you can't make this too overt, okay? You have to be nuanced about it. Pierre Martel the same way, right? He's not saying, hey, come on down, we'll throw in a free pool with every 3-bedroom purchase in New Brunswick, okay? You can't do that. In order to make that work, in order to have the opportunity economy successful for you, you've got to have a lot of antenna in the air though, right? You can't check into this once every 2 weeks. It has to be ongoing. People in your organization have to be paying attention to social media all the time. More participation in social media equals more results for you in social media on almost a linear equation. More equals more. And that's good, because today, in almost every company, regardless of size, social media is a job. Somebody or somebodies are the social media people in that company, and that's all they do. But those days are nearly over, because social media is too important to just be one person's job. One person cannot move fast enough. One person cannot have enough antenna in the air to do everything that you need to do in social media. You know what else used to be a job? Typing. Anybody watch Mad Men? They had a whole room of people who did nothing but type. And then we realized, you know, this typing thing is pretty important. Maybe we should make that a skill instead of a job. When I was a kid, my first job was as an intern at a public relations firm in Phoenix. And we had a lady whose only job it was to make copies. Because the copier was, as you well know, like 15 feet long. And you didn't make your own copies because you could lose a hand. It was like mining equipment, right? You just, deadliest catch, right? You did not make your own copies. And now you can make copies from your iPhone, practically. I mean, it's just a whole different deal. Making copies is a skill, not a job. Social media is going to be a skill as well. And smart companies will take bits of social media, pieces of it, and make it part of a lot of people's jobs in your organization. Much more scalable, much more effective. All those 1,500 sales reps that we talked about, they're all part of your unofficial marketing army. It's not just about the people in marketing in your company. Everybody in your company is potentially an advocate, is potentially a customer service person, is potentially a marketer, and is potentially a point of first contact. Because call centers are for suckers. I'm not going to call your 877 number and press 2 for English, okay? I'm going to go to Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or email and say, does anybody know anybody at this company? And somebody I know will know somebody and say, well, I don't know anybody in customer service or marketing, but I know Bill. He's their lawyer. I went to college with him. I'm like, all right, I'll take Bill. I don't care. All I want is a live body. It doesn't have to be the right body. I don't care what your org chart is. I want the right person who can help me. And the right person who can help me is any human being. So all of a sudden now I call Bob, and now your lawyer is first point of contact. Instantaneously, your lawyer is in marketing, and your lawyer is in customer service. And we are just scratching the surface of that trend. Everybody who carries your business card is in marketing, whether they want to be or not. Okay? We want to do business with people that we know, people that we like, and people that we trust. So everybody in your company is an ambassador, and social media makes it so. And what's funny is this actually holds true mathematically too. If you look at all the connections that your employees have in social media, so the number of people that each of your employees are connected to on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or otherwise, and you add those up, it always is more than the official company account has. So if your company's on Facebook and you have 1,000 contacts, your employees collectively will have a lot more than that in every company. Because the power in social media is in the people. And you will win the people fight every time. Because you're not a ginormous, nameless, faceless company that's competing only on margin. You are part of your community. And history is turning everybody's head toward what your actual value proposition is, which is doing business that people that we actually give a damn about. There's two kinds of changes in business. There's changes of protocol, how we do things. And there's changes of paradigm, why we do things. And this is actually both. And that can be a little scary. But the reality is that you're going to be in social media. I flat out guarantee it. You may be early to the game, you may be late to the game, but you will be in the game. Because our customers, your customers, will flat out demand that you get involved in social media. The same way they demanded we get a telephone, the same way they demanded we get a fax machine, the same way they demanded you get a website, and the same way they demanded you get an email address, your customers will eventually demand that you get active in social media. And you can either look at that as a threat, or you can, as I do and United does, look at it as the greatest opportunity presented to us in 50 years. But either way, there's going to be a new breed of winners, a new breed of companies that succeed because of this. Companies that understand that the future of business is to be faster, smarter, and more social.